Good evening and welcome to the WDSU News Hot Seat. I'm Travers Mackel. Tonight we are taking a brief break from our hot seat debates, but we are talking politics and we have a very familiar face. UNO political director, political scientist, Dr. Ed Chervenak. Thanks for being here. We're going to get to a lot of topics. So let's just jump right to it. What's your feel on the elections so far? Let's start off with the federal elections. Obviously, Steve Scalise, Troy Carter, Garrett Graves, all seeking re-election. They have opposition, but it does seem like, I don't want to put the cart before the horse before we start turning out to vote, but it does seem like they are all very confident in their chances of re-election.
Yeah, I would say 5 out of the 6 congressional representatives are facing little-known candidates, not very well-funded challengers. So, Scalise and Troy Carter should have no issues. The real question mark is in the 3rd congressional district with Clay Higgins. He's the only incumbent who's facing a well-funded opponent, basically charging him with neglect of Lake Charles, in terms of the recovery from Hurricane Laura. And so that's his job. That's the representative's job, is to make sure federal resources, flow to your district to help with that recovery. And he seems to be missing in action on that. So I think he's the one who probably will not avoid a runoff. I think everyone else wins in the primary.
There's been a big controversy with Scalise this week in D.C. and the January 6th committee with video and tapes that were released of him essentially being next to Nancy Pelosi and then at a press conference saying something totally different. Does that controversy, it's been reported here, but it's playing out bigger inside the Beltway, if you will, inside D.C., does that have any impact on his race whatsoever?
I don't think it's going to affect the outcome of his election. If he gets less than 75% of the vote, I'll be surprised. So he should win going away. In today's environment, it's more about voting against the opponent than it is voting for your candidate, this idea of negative partisanship. And I think that's kind of the thing he's basically been trying to promote is, Democrats, they're going to bring the world to an end if they keep power in the House. So I think that's going into a lot of voters' calculations, this negative partisanship. And regardless of what your party or what your candidate is doing, you're going to vote for them.
Let's talk about John Kennedy. Obviously, he has got a lot of money, a jaw-dropping amount of money on hand for a U.S. Senate race for Louisiana. The state Democratic Party backed all 3 of the challengers running against him. They essentially endorsed all 3. Does something like that help or hurt those candidates? It was already a heavy lift and an uphill battle to beat him as it was.
I don't think it does the Democratic Party any favors if by splitting their endorsements across all 3 candidates. You've got to put your money on the horse you think can win and devote resources, because it is a very, very tough slog for Democrats in this state. And so they need to get every advantage at their disposal. And, John Kennedy, I think, has more money than the total combined that the Democrats have raised. And so that puts him certainly in the catbird seat. But yeah, the Democratic Party has, some serious problems in the state. It needs to start building up its organization from the bottom up and begin, basically endorsing candidates who they feel can win.
Yeah, now I think a lot of people watching this are nodding their head, probably agreeing with you. Let's talk about something else that gets underway here, early voting. We have a lot of municipal, local races, if you will, a lot of judgeships. There are 2, a municipal and traffic court. There's an appeals court judgeship. There's a lot of other local races, Plaquemines Parish President, Harahan Mayor, Hammond Mayor. Does early voting have an impact in any of those races? And how important is early voting nowadays? It seems like it's more of a convenience thing for a lot of people.
I think you're absolutely right that people have become accustomed to early voting. And so campaigns have adjusted as a matter of fact, and so they're working to make sure they get their people to the polls early, because you never know what's going to happen on election day. The weather could turn nasty and that reduces turnout and your people don't show up. So early voting matters. We keep seeing an increase in the number of early voters. Last time was 315,000 early voters, and I suspect that number will go up this time as people become more accustomed, and that as campaigns become more accustomed to them as well, in terms of identifying their supporters and getting them to the polls as early as possible.
You did a quality of life poll at UNL. We're going to talk about that momentarily. Last question here on local elections. Has it been ho-hum? I mean, we have a big Senate race between Mandy Landry and Royce Duplessis. A lot of other races where you kind of know things are going on beneath the surface, but none of that's bubbled up to the top just yet. It's kind of by the numbers so far.
It is by the numbers, and maybe that's what we need are more kind of quiet, placid campaigns. It's usually when they start throwing bombs at each other is when they get all the media attention, and that's when people understand what's going on in terms of, oh, there's a campaign happening. So again, it's one of these kind of low key campaigns. Doesn't seem to be like a lot of disagreement between the two candidates, or even a lot of distance between the two candidates.
No.
And so, I think that, again, it's just going to come down to mobilization, that they've identified who their supporters are, and then they're going to complement their ad war with their ground game to get their folks to the polls.
All right, let's talk about the recent, you did it this week, quality of life survey. A lot of time was put into this one because you all had the time with COVID for better or for worse. Does it seem like the underlying theme that really hits people right now, no matter where you live, rich, poor, black, white, young, old, no matter what neighborhood, Jefferson or Orleans, is crime the underlying theme of your quality of life poll?
Crime is the dominant theme in our quality of life poll, that crime is really weighing down the city, that people now are dissatisfied with life in Orleans Parish. They think it's become a worse place to live over the last 5 years. 62% of Orleanians perceive crime is increasing, and so crime is the dominant issue. And of course, they're unhappy with the quality of police protection. They're unhappy with the performance of the criminal justice system, low approval ratings for the district attorney, for the police superintendent, for the parish sheriff, for the criminal courts. So they all have negative net approval ratings. And then, of course, they're unhappy with the mayor, 31% job approval. And so, she's the head of the city. She's the chief executive. And when things go wrong, people are going to assign blame to her. So yeah, crime is really the utter, complete, dominant issue in this city.
Yeah, and look, I think you live in New Orleans, so do I. So are a lot of people watching this. I think everybody is hoping that the crime issue gets settled and solved here by a lot of those elected leaders, because you and I always talk about this. With a lot of the power comes responsibility, and the responsibility is you have to take the good with the bad. Is that basically it in a nutshell? If you're the mayor, the police chief, the DA, you can claim the good, but when it's bad, you have to take it too.
They can make all the claims they want, but for us, it's about public perception, right? It's not about the objective reality that, if people perceive things as bad, then that's what they're going to communicate to their public officials. And so this is what they're communicating in this poll, is that they are very unhappy with the direction of the city. They don't think that the local government and local police are protecting them from crime. And so crime seems to be out of hand, but there doesn't seem to be any real effort to deal with it. We have a diminishing police force. And so people are kind of wondering, where is this going to end?
All right. UNO political science director, political professor, Dr. Ed Chervenak. Great job on the research. It may not be what people want to hear, but it is the cold, hard facts of what people think in the city of New Orleans right now. We'll be talking to you much more between now and Election Day, as we will have a lot to talk about. Things start to heat up in the final couple of days here. We appreciate your time. That is all the time that we have for the Hot Seat. I'm Travers Mackel. You can see this entire segment starting Monday morning on our website, WDSU.com.